it's not really how big a group is, how big the church is, because there are some churches in Honolulu, they have 10,000, 20,000 people, and they got problems. They may have resources, they have people, they have money, but they don't have the formula. I'm reading on some of those, the research that has been done, and they're coming up with some new ideas about, the medical intervention, the pharmaceutical intervention, surgical intervention. They're coming up with incredible stuff in the medical field, because once you find the formula, I begin to realize that if they find the cure for cancer, can you imagine what that would happen? And they're literally investing billions and billions of dollars all over the world. Even they're doing some experiment, I understand that even in the space, and to see if there's something that can happen there. So it's one thing to say, that we don't have a formula, we don't have any direction, we don't have anything to offer to the society. Another thing to say, well, we do have the ingredients to create a healthy, happy family and community, and the question is, what are we doing with that? So that's a struggle. That's what I'm struggling. I need to really say to myself, as a little group of people here, what is our purpose? It's not that I'm going to ask everybody, just tell me what you think. It's a rhetorical question. It's a question that we need to ask ourselves. Why am I here? Why am I here, part of this unification movement, and little group of people sitting in this school building, in this cafeteria, and why am I here? I was talking to Ron, and he's studying the divine principle. He's a very intelligent man. The reason why divine principle is so important, because if you reason, if you are a person with reason, you have to come with the grip of the reality and the facts and the truth. It's not saying, well, I believe, so you believe. No, it doesn't happen that way. You have to be totally 100% convinced. Once you know this is a truth, and the truth will set you free, and then you have a moral, spiritual obligation. What are you going to do with the truth? See, that's what I'm trying to get across. It's one thing to be ignorant. It's one thing is to be ignorant and say, well, I don't know. I understand that. But the question is, once you're confronted with the truth, once you have processed that through your intellect, and then you process it through your reason and logic, if you don't want to use the word logic, fine. With reason, you come to the conclusion that this makes sense. And this is what the world should look like. This is what the kingdom of God should look like. And then you have to live with that decision, because you will be held accountable as to what have you done with that. See, I deal with that with the people I deal with every day. I talk to them about God. I talk to them about divine principle. I don't use the word divine principle. I don't use the word, unification church. But I challenge them. I said, I can put a Band-Aid solution to this problem. It'll hold you together for a while. But I can give you also a permanent solution, and that is to, in your equation, in your family, in your personal life, include God into your equation. And that's a choice. That's a permanent, cure for this problem you're having. Whether it's a sex abuse, a child abuse, a substance abuse, you name it. Because you heard it, you heard it in the news, and you read it in the newspaper. The biggest number one problem in our state of Hawaii is the ice problem. And you can go to the internet, and all you have to have a few dollars, and you make those stuff. And once you get it into your system, you're hooked for life. And the state saying, yeah, we got a problem, but they don't have a solution. They don't want to hear a solution. But recently the good thing, George Bush, whether you agree with him or not, George Bush came up with this great idea. He said, we need to support the faith-based organizations. So what he came up with this idea, okay, the state cannot talk about God, the state cannot talk about any religious stuff, so they brought in these faith-based people and said, hey, listen, we will give you federal money. for you to do whatever you are doing. So what a lot of the church, and I just found out a couple of weeks ago, there is one church in Waimea, Billy Mitchell's church. There was one brother in the church, he was an ex-drug addict, and he was cured and clean. And so the church bought a house, and then they're housing those people who need intensive in-home treatment for the extreme cases. The church took the responsibility to say, hey, listen, we got a problem here. We need to deal with it. And so this man has been trained, and he understands that I don't know what drug addiction is. I don't use drugs, I don't like drugs. But this man was an ex-drug addict. He understands, how people function and react and deal with these issues. So the church, what you call the Mana Christian Fellowship, they got together and say, hey, we need to deal with that. It's a drop in the bucket. It's just a little drop in the bucket, but it's still a drop in the bucket. How do you like, I was in Honolulu. I was staying in one of the nicest hotels, because company pays for it. So why might as well enjoy it, right? Otherwise, I would have tried to find the cheapest place. But I was staying in a nice hotel, and I come back after a whole day training. I come back. My little bag, a little bag that I bought there when I was there, is gone. It was stolen. And I have to call the police. They come and see. They say the sliding door. Because see, the thing is, they're saying, hey, it happens every day in Honolulu. It doesn't matter what hotel you stay, because people who are drug crazy, they will do anything to get an extra buck to shoot themselves into this, Europia, so that they can stay away from all the issues that they temporarily. So nothing is safe. So what I'm trying to say is that if you don't deal with that as a church, if you don't deal with it as this group of people, we do have the formula. See, that's the thing I'm trying to say. If you do not have the formula, then it's fine. We are ignorant as the rest of the people are, the so-called churches. And that's the reason I begin to understand. Why is that? Why is that Reverend Moon is always trying to get those political people, trying to get the educational people, trying to get the college students, trying to get, the young people. Why are they spending a lot of money trying to gather all these people and pass on this information? Because that is the only way that we can transform the society. But the question is, what are we doing? I really, as you know, I really admire Chuck and, Miami-san, because they live principle. They don't talk about principle, they live it. And I kind of like that. It's a principle. It's not that I understand it, a concept, but it's a living it. It's very evident why. Because look at their children. He believes in putting back into community and the society. So what is that does? It's not the money, but he invests his children back into the society, back into whether it is STF or whether it's whatever they're doing. You're putting back your life, your extension of your life. That is saying a lot to people like me, saying, wow. And that's laying down your life. We want our children to be with us. We want our children to hang on to us. We want the children to be, but it is the most difficult thing to release those children into a mission, because anything could happen. But then the process of that, there is also what we call the blessing that God gives to us. And it doesn't matter whether it's 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, it doesn't matter how long they are. They're touching people's life. It's not just fundraising. Why are we raising money for? It's not that. It's to break those barriers that has a fear of people, the fear of strange places. You break those barriers so that you become a world citizen. I remember the first time, many, many years ago, when I first took my trip overseas, I was scared. I was young, I was adventurous, but yet deep down I was very anxious. I said, I don't know what to expect. Different language, different culture, different currency, different type of